Hi, I'm Ayana. I'm a millennial, first-generation college student in my second year. The video you're about to watch was composed for a research assignment for my advanced English composition class. I'm by no means an expert on the subject matter, but I have spent countless hours of research, thank you Starbucks, on the content you're about to digest. Enjoy.
Flint, Michigan.
This is what your water is, of course, supposed to look like when you turn on your faucet. But for days, some families in Lake Station, Indiana, say their water has been brown.
Just like that.
You're looking at the largest off-stream reservoir in the United States, and it should be twice as full at this date and time.
Sao Paulo and 20 million people running low on water.
Iran's water is drying up.
Yes, Cape Town on the southern tip of Africa is the extreme example of a water crisis. But the planet is peppered with places enduring real water stress.
This is the worst drought to hit South Africa since 1982.
On this episode of China Uncensored, if you travel to China, don't drink the water.
It's water.
Less water, less. Use as needed, we don't have access. Washing our dress or doing in the mess. We waste water, all must confess. Less water, less. Use as needed, we don't have access.
Going into the research for this project, I had no prior knowledge of this issue, other than hearing it pop up every once in a while in the news or social media. With the noise volume of the world on 90 and impending doom seemingly around the corner, it's hard to know what to focus on. For my generation especially, there's an overabundance of global issues to take on. Racism, politics, global warming. Going into this expansive project with the ability to pick any topic was intimidating, but one thing stuck out in my mind. War over water. I'd heard people in passing say repeatedly,
You know World War III is going to be over water. You know World War III is going to be over water. You know World War III is going to be over water.
So my first question was, why? This led me to a term called water privatization. Water privatization, private sector participation in the provision of water services and sanitation. Okay, so water privatization is basically when corporations buy water systems in cities or small municipalities once owned by its citizens. Why is this a bad thing? That answer was a bit more complicated. Upon further research, I found that governments around the world are abdicating their responsibilities to protect the natural resources in their territory. giving authority away to private companies involved in resource exploitation as a means to cut costs. In rural communities all over the world, corporate interests are buying up farmlands, indigenous lands, wilderness tracts, and whole water systems, then moving on when sources are depleted. Fierce disputes are being waged in many places over water, especially in poverty-stricken third world countries. In an article titled "Towns Sell Their Water Systems and Come to Regret It" by Elizabeth Douglas, Douglas explores the benefit and setbacks of water privatization through the lens of Lake Station, Indiana, a small town that has suffered from cutbacks at local steel mills, statewide caps on property tax, and debt to build a new city hall, leading them to consider selling their utilities to free up their budget and bring the town out of the red. Moreover, Douglas illustrates why the option of privatization seems so desirable to so many towns, as it would offload the expensive headache of repairing these systems onto someone else, for-profit companies, but not without repercussion for doing so. While costs may be quote-unquote cut for the government, which is operated on tax dollars, the cost incurred by the private company during the purchase, repairs, and a 6% profit are all charged to taxpayers, making cost of water outrageous. State regulatory agencies allow private operators to earn a profit on their investments. American Water Works, Indiana subsidiary, collects 6.6% on these costs, giving them a strong incentive to upgrade systems more quickly than the government-owned facilities would be. This means American Water could bill its customers throughout Indiana for the estimated expenses of buying Lake Station's system, as well as a 6.6% profit. Rate hikes have been used in the United States and other countries as a way for private water companies to maximize profits. The bottom line for these companies is profit, which translates into higher prices and inferior service for consumers. The companies are under no obligation to provide water or service when water is defined as a marketable commodity rather than a human right. Thus, when consumers can no longer afford the price, water delivery is simply shut off. The World Bank has predicted that by the year 2025, 2/3 of the world's population will run short of fresh drinking water.
At 1 mile, I wish my day could start like yours. On a gentle walk to school and later to a shopping mall, a party or a local park. At 2 miles, I contemplate what it's like at your place, to turn a tap and see the flow of water for a clean of teeth, a drink, a shower, and a wash of clothes. At 3 miles, I think of you. Perhaps you're in a swimming pool or eating at a restaurant with water bottles on your table. At 4 miles, I ask myself whether you ever given idle thoughts about my trek through scorching heat. To the spring, the riverbank, a muddy hole where I collect the dirty water I must drink. I start the 4-mile journey home. A full container on my back. Sometimes I daydream about other children in other countries far away from here. I wonder what the distance is of their daily water walk.
These privatization-induced rate increases have been most devastating in the developing world, often forcing people to choose between food and water and unleashing epidemics of waterborne diseases. Contrary to public assertions, the role of the IMF and World Bank in water privatization schemes in the developing world actually result in a reduction of access to water for the poor. Under the General Agreement on Trade and Services, GATS, a treaty of the World Trade Organization, once a service is privatized, the WTO rules also give special protection for private investors. In deals brokered by the World Bank, which often make water privatization a condition for a loan, companies are usually guaranteed a cash payment for expropriation if a government agency decides to bring water back under public control. Structural adjustment programs forced upon governments seeking loans often include water privatization as a condition for these loans. Impoverished, politically enfeebled countries are hardly in a position to refuse the conditions of the IMF and World Bank, as doing so would cause them to default on their debts. As a result, the IMF and World Bank are able to provide lucrative and virtually risk-free contracts for multinational corporations. In Guayaquil, Ecuador, water prices increased by 180% after the water system there was taken over by Interagua, a subsidiary of Bechtel. Customers of the private water provider in Jakarta, Indonesia, experienced a 258% increase in tariffs and poor water quality, while only 58% of low-income households were provided with new water connections. A similar pattern of exclusion was also evident in La Paz and El Alto, Bolivia, where a private contractor was accused of denying water service to 80,000 families. Many couldn't afford the cost of setting up a connection, which for the poorest households cost the equivalent of more than 2 years of food expenses. Lack of easy access to water carries severe public health consequences, resulting in 1.5 million deaths a year. High water prices bought on by privatized service deprive consumers of their right to water, often with disastrous health and social consequences. High water prices in Guayaquil, Ecuador, were linked to the poor water quality and hepatitis outbreaks. Because the profit motive drives the corporate agenda rather than serving the public interest, environmental standards are continually compromised. In the United States, the National Association of Water Companies, NAWC, representing the private water industry, intensively lobbies both Congress and the Environmental Protection Agency to prevent higher water quality standards from being adopted. NAWC continually requests that all federal regulations be based on sound cost-benefit analysis. What this means is that public health is compromised for the sake of higher profits. Water is one of the most basic human needs. Many nations and traditions, in fact, consider water a human right. If water rights are handed over to entities whose declared purpose is to maximize profits rather than to serve the public good, hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of people will be elbowed out of their access to water. Multinational corporations are quick to argue that market forces would bring more efficiency to water systems. But the bottom line is that water resources, by their very public nature, require public oversight to ensure that people, not profits, come first.
I am a prisoner. I am a prisoner. Transatlantic flag. Prisoner.
Thank you for watching up to this point. I just wanted to hop in here real quick and give you a quick little director's cut and commentary over some of the decisions that I made on this documentary. I first want to say that I think of this less as a documentary and more of a visual research project. So with that in mind, let's hop into it. Okay, so I first want to talk about the opening scene. Past the prologue, you'll see brown water from Flint, Michigan, and then you'll see brown water from Lake Station, Indiana, as well as a woman in Ohio lighting her water on fire from fracking. I wanted to show those three before I went into anything with the world's water crisis and the scarcity of water, to help viewers, especially those in the United States, understand that this affects everyone. It's not just a third world issue as many would believe. Next, there is the news clippings of various places throughout the world talking about water being scarce there or being in some sort of a water crisis. I put those in there to show that it's in the entire world. The entire world is in a water crisis, and that really sets the stage of the research that I go on to talk about throughout the rest of the visual. I also want to talk to you about the opening scene. So you'll see lots of visuals of water, and then you will see the camera pull out into this drought-stricken land. And then you'll hear a poem by a little boy. He's 5 years old, and this is a poem that's taught to children in kindergarten classes in India. I felt like this really laid foundation for the documentary, as it just is scary that we're already having to teach our kids, like, hey, we don't have this. We don't have water at 5 years old. It's really haunting. The next thing that I want to talk about is the visuals that take place throughout the entire documentary. I wanted the viewer to feel more than I wanted to illustrate what I'm saying. So my script for this documentary ended up being about 10 pages, which is a lot. It took me, I think, 24 hours, working hours, to record and do everything on here, and I could have went over more. I really just landed on wanting people to feel more than I wanted just to present facts. I wanted you to feel the importance of water, which is why you'll see multiple images of water, images of things that take water, such as food, and then you'll just see life in general. I really want viewers to be able to contemplate on their life and how water affects their lives as they hear the information that can completely change that. The next thing that I want to talk about is the water walk. I put this in as a middle point for the visual. I wanted to bridge the logistics of everything and the statistics of what's going on over to the humane side and how this affects people in third world countries and less developed countries. As I said in the documentary, corporations are going into these countries that can't afford to repair their water systems or afford water infrastructure, and giving them loans that they can't afford and buying the rights. So even this little girl that you see that's walking 4 miles a day to get water, by law, she's not going to be allowed to if we continue to allow water privatization to happen. That's insane. Well, that's all I have for you guys for now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it or learned something, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.